A thesis statement clearly communicates your paper's main claim. In other words, it is a single sentence that tells your reader exactly what point you're trying to make. In this way, the thesis controls your paper. In order to create a good thesis, you have to first think about what your point of view or your attitude about a subject is, and then make that into a claim. Remember that a claim has to be arguable, and it can't be a fact, and you want to make sure that you're not overly aggressive. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you really want to very clearly and specifically identify what your point of view about a subject is. So you can see with the following examples that you can tell exactly what this writer is wanting to do with each one of these sentences, and that the claim is definitely arguable. So if we look at the first one, homework does not benefit student learning. You can see that this statement tells us that the writer is going to try to prove that homework does not benefit student learning. Notice that this is a claim that is definitely arguable. My 14-year-old daughter would probably agree with it, but most of your teachers won't. So to create a thesis, just take your subject or your topic, your thought or your opinion about that topic that you want to try to prove in your essay, and then create a single sentence. For example, Teen Mom is educational might give us a thesis that reads, the television show Teen Mom is educational. You can always make a thesis more specific by adding a plan of development, but you don't have to do that. So there's an example here where a plan of development has been added. The television show Teen Mom is educational because the audience can accurately learn about the difficulties of being a young parent. By adding the plan of development, it just gives the reader a more specific sense of exactly what is going to be discussed in the essay. The simplest way to add a plan of development to your thesis is just to list, in a way, the main topics of your body paragraphs. So if I had a subject, the Hunger Games, and I thought that the movie was bad, then my original thesis would be the movie Hunger Games is bad. To add a plan of development, I would just add the three main reasons why I think it's bad. Those three main reasons then become the topics of my body paragraphs. For example, the movie Hunger Games is bad because of the overacting, the special effects, and the unconvincing love story. Things to keep in mind about your thesis statement is that because it controls your paper, it needs to be extremely precise. So it should be focused, it should be limited, it should be precise. For example, Britney Spears is good. The word good in itself is not very limited. It's not precise. It's not focused. You know what the essay is going to be about, but it's going to be hard to prove the word good because it is a little vague. If I changed that thesis to read Britney Spears is better than Miley Cyrus because she is a better dancer, singer, and lyricist, then as a writer, I know exactly what I'm going to focus on in this essay. And as a reader, the reader can tell exactly the job that this essay is going to do. There's no leeway here. So it's a much better thesis statement. You always want to try to do this and keep this in mind when you're writing a thesis. So with these thesis statements here, you can see how just by making the thesis statement a little bit more precise, it completely changes what we as a reader can interpret about the essay, and it's much clearer, much more precise. So if we have video games can cause problems, the reader doesn't know what these problems are, as opposed to violent video games cause an increase in antisocial behavior. We know exactly what this essay is going to be about. The government needs to create more jobs. That is arguable, but not overly arguable. But if we change that to create more jobs, the government needs to reform the tax code. Now we've offered a solution that is extremely arguable. To create more jobs, the government needs to invest in infrastructure projects. Same thing, becomes more arguable, and we know exactly what this essay is going to be about. So obviously, if a thesis statement needs to be limited, it needs to be focused, and it needs to be precise, then one thing that a thesis absolutely cannot be is too general. Smoking causes many problems. All right away, many problems is extremely general. There's some good things and bad things about the movie Rambo. Again, there's no direction. We don't really know what this essay is going to be about. It's way too general. Gun control is a big issue in America. High school football is very important to many people. Again, too vague. That doesn't mean these thesis statements cannot become better. We would just need to make them more specific to fix them. You'll also notice when you're writing, if you start off with a thesis statement that's too general like this, one problem you might find yourself running into is that you just keep writing and writing and writing and writing, and you never really feel like you're getting to a point. Look back at your thesis as you're writing. If you feel like you're having that problem, look back to your thesis. I guarantee you it's probably because you're starting off with a thesis statement that's too general. A thesis can also not be a statement of fact. Remember, we want to have an arguable claim that we're trying to prove. So we don't want to start off with a fact that no one is going to argue with. Smoking is bad for your health. Yeah, of course it is. Everybody knows that. So then you might be able to prove that statement, but you're not doing anything in your essay. You're not getting a job across in your essay. San Antonio is larger than Beeville. Same thing. You can prove that statement. You could write an essay on that, but it's not arguable. You're not proving a point, an opinion, okay? It also cannot be an announcement. I see this often. You don't want to start off with, in my paper I will discuss, or the subject of this paper is, I will be writing about, I will be teaching you. You don't want that. The announcement part is the I will be in my paper. You want to completely remove that from academic writing. A thesis cannot be overly aggressive. And the main reason for this is when you word yourself in an overly aggressive manner, it immediately offends the reader. So if you think about how we communicate verbally, we joke around with friends and stuff and might say, "Oh, you're smoking, you're an idiot," or "If you don't like ice cream, you're seriously mental." We might talk like that with our friends and joke around, but we wouldn't tell a stranger those things because we know that we're probably going to offend them. And the thing that happens when someone is offended, it's human nature. We automatically become defensive and angry, and we stop listening. And that's the exact antithesis of what we want to happen when we're writing. Our whole purpose when we're writing is to communicate a point. So we want our reader to listen to what we have to say. And to do that, we have to make sure that we are not overly aggressive with our opinions and how we communicate our opinions. And lastly, where exactly does the thesis statement go? Even though there's no exact area that a thesis statement is must go, there isn't a book that says, your thesis statement shall be the last sentence of your introduction. That's true. You don't have to have it as the last sentence. But for my class, I'm going to ask that you have your thesis statement be the very last sentence of your introductory paragraph. That way, right before you start your body paragraphs, your reader knows exactly what point it is you're trying to make. So again, you'll start off with your intro, and the last sentence of that intro will be your thesis statement.